What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Pardon me. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday. I'm getting a bad mixer here. It is Tuesday, January 17th, 2017. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I'm feeling much better. Thanks to for everybody for all the email about get well and suggestions, most of which we're doing, nano silver and manuka honey and so forth. My voice is still a little shot, but I'm actually feeling a lot better. And so thanks for all the concern that was being expressed there. Anyway, phone lines are open. 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in, put you on the air with your comments and questions and so forth and so on. Well, taking a long look, the wide view about all this chatter about disrupting the inauguration, it's beginning to look like it could be a very intense Friday through Monday, because going on out and doing a Google search on Disrupt J20, which is apparently sort of the umbrella for all of these different groups, you can see they're well funded. They've got a lot of professional looking graphics, they've got websites, they've got resources. Apparently they're advertising for people to come on in and protest. They're paying them $2,500 a month. So are we going to see disruption in Washington, D.C. all the way to February 20th? I rather seriously doubt it. But we're looking at this very obvious attempt at a coup d'etat. And I'm starting to see a lot of similarities between Washington, D.C. right now and Kiev just before that coup d'etat. And maybe that's what they're planning on doing, is just disrupting Washington, D.C., crashing the whole thing and saying, oh, well, we've got to make some basic changes to the nation and get rid of that Constitution and so forth and so on. Now, this 2016 election we just got through was a peaceful revolution. We, the people, working together, overwhelmed the election fraud and corporate media. And now it looks like a violent counter-revolution to re-enslave the American people to the CIA narcocracy is clearly being planned. And James O'Keefe's videos, he had the one about pouring butyric acid into the ventilation system at one of the inaugural balls. Now he's just released another video where these Disrupt J20 planners are talking about literally chaining the trains together or to local fixtures so that they can't move, and other ways of simply disrupting all the traffic flow in Washington, D.C. Now, this is some serious stuff. This is incitement to riot, incitement to civil disobedience, but violence begets violence, and they could literally start a civil war here. Now, we're seeing reported in a lot of different places, the dailysheeple.com, Sputnik News, where apparently a company over in San Francisco is running ads in 24 major cities offering $2,500 a month for agitators to get paid for fighting against Trump at this week's inauguration events, and they're trying to basically get riots and protests in the other cities. This is starting to shape up like the attempt to create a martial law justification in the wake of the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case, where they were pretending, oh, there's going to be nationwide race riots and we're going to have to declare martial law and everything. And it didn't happen because the blacks and whites are all smart enough to realize this is what the government wanted them to do. So it's getting intense. And while I love the idea of a bunch of these liberal snowflakes thinking they actually could go up against a bunch of military veterans and bikers, the bikers for Trump showing up, they're saying they're not going to interfere with the police. They're there if the police need some help, but it's only going to exacerbate the situation. Now, there's a little bit of good news on that because apparently somebody hacked into Disrupt J20 and released names and other internal documents. And the three men in that video about the butyric acid are Colin Dunn, Luke Kuhn, and Scott Green. And apparently there is a report that the FBI is talking to them right now and may charge them with incitement to commit violence. And that would certainly pull the rug out from what's going on. And all of those liberal snowflakes who are out there getting paid by whoever it is, I think we can guess, need to understand that little deal does not come with bail money, let alone legal fees. What you're talking about here is not a peaceful protest. You're talking about civil disobedience and rioting in the streets. These carry criminal penalties. Now, Piers Morgan has come on out with a valid, cogent observation. Those snowflakes who are determined to delegitimize Donald Trump's presidency before he even takes the oath, they're not just undermining him. They're undermining democracy and undermining America itself, and maybe that is their goal, to force a dramatic change to the United States of America that allows the establishment to retake control. Because that old model of a fascist economic dictatorship with trappings of democracy has broken down. Everybody understands how crooked it is. And the only way the fascist dictatorship can continue is to start to act like one. And just say, we're not going to fool you anymore. This is the reality. You might as well get used to it, which I don't think is going to happen. So I'm hoping cooler heads will prevail. I'm hoping that the FBI will gather up these ringleaders and shut it down. The long-range forecast for Washington, D.C. is for rain on Friday. Maybe that'll dampen their enthusiasm. But what we have here is a classic definition of a conspiracy, an organization to commit acts of violence in the streets of Washington, D.C., and who knows where all else. That's what's going. Now, apparently, one of the threats being made by these disruptors involves protests outside the home of Trump's family. It's one thing to protest Donald Trump as the president-elect, but to threaten the family, that's crossing a line. It really, really is. And apparently they're targeting Ivanka Trump because apparently the liberals just hate the idea of a beautiful woman who's also successful because it goes against their victimhood psychology. Women and minorities are supposed to be oppressed by all us straight, heterosexual white males. That's what the entire liberal establishment sells itself on. And the image of a beautiful woman who is a business success just goes against that. And they absolutely hate her for that. Just like they hate anybody who is a minority, who is a success. It undermines that victimhood agenda. Well, they need not worry because we finally got a clarification on what's going on with Ivanka Trump. She is moving to Washington, D.C. to be with her husband, Jared Kushner, who is Trump's senior advisor, and they bought a home in Washington, D.C. But that's it. Ivanka has stepped down from all of her business interests. She will not have a role in the White House. She's going to focus on being a mother and taking care of family. And that's it. All that big ruckus about Ivanka, and it turned out there was no there. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, we're hearing a rumor floating around that CNN and BuzzFeed have acquired a new videotape of Donald Trump that will damage him in the eyes of the public, and they're going to release it sometime tomorrow. At least that's what they're claiming. And obviously, it's not going to change the fact of the presidency. But it's just another dig, another gotcha. We're going to delegitimize you in the eyes of the public. Now, I wanted to remind everybody, and I put up a link to this demonstration video of a software technology called Face-to-Face. And no, it's not available as an app on your smartphone. I'm sorry. But basically what it does, it takes a video of somebody famous, and in the demonstrations they use George Bush and Donald Trump, and they have an actor speaking new lines. And they have real-time, what's called a facial Waldo, reading the expression on the actor's face and then morphing the original source image of the famous person to copy it. Now, this video is actually kind of old, and the technology is a little obvious. I'm sure it's been refined by now. And it's another reminder, anything coming out of the corporate media, can be faked. I remember in the original movie Marathon Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they were talking about software where they needed to fake the Schwarzenegger character's death. And they had a stuntman go in and get killed, and they mapped Schwarzenegger's face onto it. Back then, it was blue sky science fiction. Today, it's a reality, and you need to understand it. These corporate media outlets have the money to buy this kind of equipment and software. And obviously, no moral or ethical compunction against using it. Look at all the fakes we've already caught. Sloppy green screens, miswritten stories, misquoted stories, misidentified people. If they think they can get away with it with the majority of the American people, yeah, they'll fake a video of him. There's already one video out floating around supposedly of Donald Trump in a compromising situation, and it turns out they used a wax figure of him that they either borrowed or stole from a wax museum. And it was a good likeness except for the fact that it wasn't moving. They just put it in a bed and said, see, there's Donald Trump and here's all these whatever dancing around. Now, out in California, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, on an interview with MSNBC anchor Chris Matthews, was out there screaming how Donald Trump is not legitimate, and then basically came on out and said that she is going to push for immediate impeachment of Donald Trump on the basis that she claims Russia gave Donald Trump the term crooked Hillary to use in the campaign. Well, there just has to be something in the water in California, maybe it's all that fracking fluid, that's driving these people wacko bananas. Crooked Hillary was all over the independent media, including my website, long before Trump even declared for the presidency. And it just shows the utter desperation and unwillingness to accept that they lost the election. And they're out there looking for scapegoats. We're liberals. We're perfect. We never fail. It has to be somebody else's fault. All right, we're going to take a quick phone call. Errol in the Netherlands, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hello, Mike. I just I've written something down, and it's for you and for everybody that is listening into the show. I'm also under the weather. I hear that you are also under the weather.
Yeah, a lot of people are sick. John Stadmiller was out there, and I don't know. I guess pharmaceutical stocks are dropping now that Robert Kennedy's in charge of that vaccine commission.
I don't know what it is.
So they're drumming up business by throwing test tubes out the window of their labs.
I think so. Okay, I just want to tell you. I wrote this down before I'm going to. I just want to say this.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this down, so I'm going to say this now. The Internet is a new free democracy for future generations. Hold on, I'm not finished. The Internet is a new free democracy for future generations to come. That's what I wrote down.
I like that. I like that. I like that a lot.
What do you think of that slogan?
I think it's great. I'm going to put it in my master quotes file.
I will repeat it again. The Internet is a new free democracy, not democracy, but free democracy for future generations to come.
Well, I absolutely love it.
Perfect. Oh, no.
Yeah, I think it certainly distills it down there. Anything else?
No, that was it. I just want to tell you this because I know what the Internet is, and I'm also a guy that has multiple operating systems. I want to say to your audience, don't use one operating system.
Mm-hmm.
Use multiple. And yeah. Yes.
Yeah, well, for us computer dweebs, that's very easy to do. Most consumer level computer users are just having trouble coping with one. And the hierarchy is, if you know nothing about computers, you want to go to Macintosh. If you know a little bit about computers, you go to Windows. If you really want to talk to the bare metal, you go to Linux.
I want to say to everybody that is listening to the show now, I'm on Linux, and it's a top and state-of-the-art operating system. And when you don't want viruses or malware or whatever, go to Linux. Just go to Linux. Explore it. There are many variations, but I'm personally using Linux Mint. You know Linux Mint?
Yes, I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm using Linux SUSE.
That's very good.
Myself here.
Yeah,
and let me clarify something though. There are viruses and malware that are starting to hit Linux systems. Do you remember all that time when Apple was advertising Macintosh as free from viruses and malware? It wasn't that the Apple computers were more immune. It's just there weren't enough of them to really make it worthwhile. Then, as Apple's market share grew, the malware writers started attacking that, and as more and more people go onto Linux, we'll see more malware on that as well. But I have a multi-boot system here. And one thing I noticed is when I'm running Linux, it is so much faster than when I'm running any of the Windows variants.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for taking my call, and or whatever.
Okay, well, have a good day. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, there we are. Now then, John Kerry has gone after Donald Trump for Trump's comments about Germany's auto industry and immigration policies. And Kerry's out there saying it's inappropriate for Trump to interfere, to comment on other nations' policies. Really? I never heard a peep from John Kerry when Barack Obama was trying to interfere with the Brexit vote. Sounds like another case of a double standard. It's okay for the liberal Democrats to do it, but you conservatives, you can't do that. You're not liberal. You don't have the intellect and the insight to mess around with the rest of the world. That's our job, gosh darn it, here. Now, here's a story coming out of Zero Hedge. Civil War II is underway. What's left in the CIA's bag of tricks? And it is getting very obvious that there is a hostility between the incoming administration of Donald Trump and the Central Intelligence Agency, which institutionally has just sort of gotten used to the idea that they're really in charge of the nation, because all of our presidents and members of Congress for the last several decades have been under their control, compromised by the drug trade or other means. And the reason the establishment was so afraid of Donald Trump is he is an outsider. They couldn't find anything on him to control him with. He's got his own money. He can't be bought. He's already out there doing things that we all know are for the better of the nation as a whole, such as questioning vaccine safety. And the CIA is basically, they don't want to give up that covert control of the nation. So now we have this former intelligence officer, John Schindler, and he used to be an analyst with the National Security Agency, and he basically has gone public saying, yes, the CIA is conducting an operation to find some way to take out President-elect Donald Trump. Either smear him to the point where he has to resign or find something that he can be impeached with. There was talk about Mike Pence invoking the 25th Amendment, all kinds of ridiculous, desperate Hail Mary passes to get rid. They're so scared of him. And they're scared of this growing independence in the minds of the American people. They're absolutely terrified. We have to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And an alert listener wrote in to correct me that Marathon Man was the one about Laurence Olivier playing Mengele. The movie I was thinking of was Running Man, The Running Man. And the original one back there with Schwarzenegger. So I goofed on that one. Now then, I am not the only person who is apparently seeing similarities between what's going on in Washington, D.C. and what happened in Kiev just prior to the U.S.-sponsored coup d'etat. Because Putin is now sounding the warning of a Maidan-style attempt to bring down Donald Trump and install somebody that the establishment wants running this country, rather than what you, the people, want. Now, getting on back to that original contract with America, the Constitution, if the government isn't playing by those rules, then the government itself is delegitimized. We do not owe it our loyalty, our obedience, our money, and certainly we do not owe that illegitimate government life and limb of our children for their wars of conquest. And that's really what's at stake. Because if they succeed in taking out Donald Trump, he will be replaced with a true war hawk who will get us into World War III for real. And millions of people are going to die. But it makes money. That makes it okay. We can wipe out a couple of billion people, as long as there's a profit in it. Now, the director of the CIA, who is not going to have his job much longer, apparently, is slamming Donald Trump for slamming the CIA. And it reveals a kind of an interesting phenomenon going on. You've probably heard the old saying, to find out who really rules you, find out who you're not allowed to talk about. Because in this country, you can talk about the president bombing a country under false pretenses, engaging in torture to find weapons of mass destruction that don't exist all the time. But boy, if you criticize the CIA, it's the end of the world. The whole planet shakes, and people tremble in fear. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Doing okay.
I got home. I don't know if you've been talking about this, but I heard it on my phone. While I was driving. Roger Stone was in InfoWars, and he's been sick for a while. He had been sick. He's been in and out, and really bad. Couldn't hold food down, losing weight, lesions on his body, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yes.
And he finally had blood tests. He had tests done, and he came up with plutonium. Somebody tried to poison him. Fortunately, he was able to fight. I guess he didn't get enough of it to kill him. So
I don't know. If he's contaminated with polonium, it's only a matter of time. I'm sorry to say that, but that stuff does not go away. So if that is a true story, then he is in serious trouble.
Well, the thing is, his doctor told him it's been flushed out. He's managed to get it. It's smashed it because he probably didn't consume that much. His symptoms are better now.
Well,
he said they definitely came down with the. They definitely came down. He said the results came in that he had been infected by polonium. Excuse me.
Okay.
That's not to be like CIA.
Could very well be. I mean, the CIA's got a lot of stuff where they can deal out death, and a lot of that was covered in the Church Committee hearings back in 1975, which was looking at all of the intelligence agencies' rogue behavior following the exposure of COINTELPRO.
Remember, too, that he lives most of the time down in Florida. Rawling was, if not CIA itself, CIA-type contractors who worked from Latin America, who did certain things for the CIA and are loyal to them. And the Bushes are down there, too. Jeb Bush might, be very easy, who I still think have big contacts with the CIA, and it could have been the Bushes behind it. I still say it is, but...
Well, okay, I'll take a look into this. I'm having some problems with certain aspects of the story. Thank you for the call. We got to let you go and run some commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And during the commercial break, I did a little quick research, and it turns out chelation therapy can rid your body of some polonium, not all of it. The good news is polonium-210's half-life is just 138 days. And so after that, if you survive that period of time, then the outlook is good. Polonium-210 is an alpha emitter. If it's outside your body, it's pretty much harmless. It's only if you ingest it somehow that it's going to be a problem. But again, it's a very short half-life, so it may well be. As far as the CIA being in Florida, let's be honest, they are everywhere. This island's crawling with them. And I've already run into a couple of them who are open about saying, yeah, I'm with CIA. And mostly they're kind of arrogant jerks. I remember one guy, though, elderly gentleman, very nice. I actually liked him. I could have been friends with him. Anyway, getting on back to the news here. Apparently all those neocons and Republicans who were helping Hillary Clinton and working against Donald Trump are now whining to the corporate media how they've been blacklisted from having jobs in Trump's administration. What did you think was going to happen when you tried to hand the presidency to Donald Trump's opponent? Did you think he was going to walk up, give you a wet, sloppy kiss of forgiveness and say, come on in? It's the same thing with all these liberal celebrities out there in Hollywood that were all backing Hillary Clinton and saying, I'm a friend with Hillary Clinton, it's going to be good for my career. And now they're looking at the fact that they're on the outs. As liberal as Hollywood is, producers, directors, casting directors, and so forth, they want to play it safe. They want to work with the people who are in with the current administration. And that's why all these celebs are screaming and crying and whining, because the clock is running out on what's left of their career. By the way, somebody took some of these celebrity videos that were trying to help Hillary Clinton and re-edited them into this hilarious satirical video, Unite for Famous People. And it's on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and you can take a look at that, and it's a giggle. We're going to take a phone call now. Donna in New Mexico. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. You sound a lot better.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. It's just my voice is taking a while to recover, and Clara's already saying, when can you sing with the choir again? When can you sing with the choir again? So the pressure is on. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it.
All right, I'm calling to
Claire's
tell you,
calling.
I don't know if you... I'm sorry?
I said Claire's calling from the other office saying, I heard that.
All right, there's some breaking news, and you may have gotten it, you may not have. Obama has commuted Chelsea Manning's sentence.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
She'll be released May 17th.
All right, that is outstanding.
That's pretty freaking amazing, but I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
All right, we know Julian Assange made this offer, about a week ago, that he would surrender himself if Chelsea would be released. There's that one.
Mm-hmm.
The second question is, when Trump is president, is this something he could reverse, or would he reverse it?
Would he reverse a pardon or a commutation? I don't think he would. The political costs outweigh the gain. I mean, Chelsea Manning is basically going to fade into history, and why stir that all up again? I think the bigger question is, if Assange does in fact surrender himself, first of all, the case against him for the sexual assault has fallen apart. The woman who filed the complaint against him has gone public saying she was pressured. There were things that were in the official report that she never said, and so that's all falling apart. So it would be time for them to come home. And the same thing with Edward Snowden. We have seen these people who are acting in what they see as the best interests of this country, and they're just being literally crucified in the media. And it's time to undo that damage. And if Obama wants to really polish up his legacy in these last few days, I would add it's time for a pardon for Leonard Peltier, Mumia al-Jabbar. We need him out because these two people are apparently in jail for crimes they did not actually commit.
I'm in total agreement.
Yes.
But anyway, that's the breaking news, and now I'm just wondering what will happen with Assange, and I have concerns about that as well, because I have no idea what they would do to this man. And he's sacrificed a lot. But that's all I have for you. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Donna. I think in the case of Assange, his fame and popularity is his best shield. It's one thing for the government to go on out and slap down somebody that hardly anybody has ever heard of, and quite another to go after somebody who is well known, because then the political costs start to escalate. And I think Trump's going to have his hands full dealing with the here and now, and not be all that concerned with the mess that he's inheriting from Obama. He might just let it all go away and say, I got better things to work on right now. Manufacturing, the economy, making America great. It's time to let all this stuff fade away. I think, given the fact that we're seeing the FBI appear to be launching honest investigations into the Clintons, that the popular view of Assange and Edward Snowden is going to be the image of a hero. And I don't think Donald Trump is going to want to be seen as going after a popular hero, especially after having won an election as a populist hero. So that's just my feeling on that. Now then, apparently the liberal snowflakes at the university level are declaring war on Trumpism. We're going to challenge Trumpism. And apparently Anthony Gokowski of Campus Reform is reporting there's a national teach-in movement asking for college professors to take all the time between Martin Luther King Jr. Day and the inauguration to teach their classes to protest oppression and challenge Trumpism. Now, of course, that is not what all these students have gone into hideous debt to learn, because you're not going to get a degree and go on out and get a job because you don't like Donald Trump. And again, that word oppression, that is the mainstay of the liberal selling point. You are all oppressed. Support us. We will unoppress you. Well, take a look at how much freedom of oppression the black people actually got in the 8 years of the Obama administration. Their lot really has not been improved. In fact, all of our standards of living have gone down. But that's their selling point, and that's why the liberals hate any successful black people. They hate Ivanka Trump for being a beautiful woman who's also a success at business, because it undermines this liberal selling point. You are oppressed. The reason your life is not a success is because of those straight white males. And anytime somebody is a success who is not a straight white male, it challenges that, and people are noticing it. Now, interestingly enough, a group of veteran intelligence professionals from all the agencies, CIA, NSA, DOS, military, so forth and so on, wrote an open letter to Barack Obama saying that he has a duty in these final days in office to actually substantiate the claim of Russian hacking of the DNC emails, or basically shut the heck up. And in this letter they're pointing on out, right now our government's credibility is on the line, so is the corporate media, because the global perception is it's just the losers hurling allegations at the winner, and none of them are sticking. Now, over in Russia, Vladimir Putin is calling this leaked dossier about the prostitutes utter nonsense. And he's right, it is. It was complete nonsense. And part of the problem is they wanted to make it shocking and titillating, so people would say, oh, it's got to be true, the big lie approach. And they jumped the shark on that one. Now, people are starting to talk about the Trump effect. This idea that nations should focus on themselves. And it's spreading. It's now reached Austria. The most popular political party now in the polls in Austria is the anti-immigration Freedom Party. And the globalists are just going ballistic. Now, WikiLeaks has come out with another revelation that apparently Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, tried to craft a plan with China that the U.S. would abandon Taiwan, abandon the idea that Taiwan is a separate country in exchange for a write-down of the U.S. debt held by China. We don't know if that deal went through or not, and that may be one of the reasons why, again, they're screaming and yelling about everything Donald Trump is saying about China. It is very reckless for somebody who's in one of these jobs, knowing they're only there for a maximum of 8 years, to make promises that in 9 years they're going to not be in a position to maintain. So, story coming out of your newswire. Apparently, FBI agents are investigating the Clinton Foundation. This is probably the reason they're starting to shut down the Clinton Global Initiative. Documents are being shredded. They're in a panic over there because apparently evidence has surfaced that Hillary Clinton was funding ISIS not just through the State Department, but from within the Clinton Foundation itself. They have found a trail of money, passing money laundering, reaching from the Clinton Foundation to supporters of ISIS. And that definitely counts as treason. Aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war. Now, the newly revived, starting from scratch investigation of the Clinton Foundation has confirmed what we already knew. The Department of Justice under Loretta Lynch actively worked to block the FBI's investigation of the Clinton Foundation. Remember, when that was all coming down, there was supposedly this FBI agent on the inside who was posting anonymously to a blog saying that the Clinton Foundation is a giant money laundry and slush fund, and everybody at the top of Washington, D.C. is dirty with it. That's why they want it to go away. I'm sure they're praying for lightning bolt to strike the building and just burn it to the ground. Because that's how they get out of all these things. Oh, the email server crashed. We can't answer the subpoena. Oh, the hard drive failed. We didn't do a backup. The tapes got recycled. I'm sorry. Speaking of broken computers, apparently over in South Korea, there's a special prosecution team investigating the president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, and apparently unidentified hackers tried to break into the prosecutor's intranet and erase files there. Didn't work. But it looks like cyber war for political gain is definitely a reality in this world here. Now, let's talk about the corporate media. The corporate media is really angry with Trump right now over the announcement that they're going to move the press conferences from the current White House press room, which is very tiny, very cramped, very hard to get a seat in there. And they're going to move it to a much larger venue that will allow Donald Trump to invite bloggers and talk radio hosts to directly participate in White House press conferences, ask their own questions, get their own answers. The corporate media's monopoly on access to the president is being torn down, and they're not happy about that one bit. Because without that monopoly, people aren't going to be tuning into the corporate media anymore. They're going to go to the talk radio hosts, they're going to go to the bloggers, because after all, we didn't lie to them about Saddam having weapons of mass destruction, or Assad having sarin gas and using it on his own Alawite supporters. The corporate media has destroyed its own credibility, and they're trying to cling to wealth and power by establishing a communications monopoly, whether it is maintaining exclusive access to the White House or arbitrarily setting themselves up as the arbiters of what is real news and fake news. And it's all actions that smack of desperate panic. And they did it to themselves. And I have no sympathy for them. I mean, if the corporate media had really been doing its traditional job all along, I would have never started this blog. I would have never gotten into talk radio. I had better things to do with my life. I had a film career, a very promising one. But as long as the corporate media serves the government and corporate interests, there is a need and a desire by the public for an independent media, not under government control, not under corporate control. And the new media of the United States is not going to be these giant, going extinct behemoth corporations, but thousands of individual talk shows and blogs preserving a diversity of opinion, which is what was originally intended. This country actually used to have laws saying no one entity can own too much of the media, because then they could dominate public opinion to an unhealthy degree, which is exactly what's happened over the last couple of decades. Now, Facebook has now announced that they are going to flag and filter what Facebook deems to be fake news in Germany, or the government of Germany will say that's fake news. Oh, the refugees are raping German women. Well, that's fake news. Take it out. People don't need to know that. Which is why people are moving off of Facebook and on to the new alternatives which are springing up. Now, BBC, the network that reported on the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 more than 20 minutes before it actually happened, has branded Donald Trump the Kremlin candidate. Ooh, he's a Russian ass. They're just piling on that thing, that Donald Trump represents covert Russian control over the United States of America. Funny how nobody ever raises a stink about Israel's covert control over the United States. Because that's okay for Israel to run our country, but it's not okay for Russia. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the corporate media. They're still playing their spin games out there. BBC is calling Trump the Kremlin president. Insert ominous music here. And the crybabies are hacking my server even as we speak. So when you're catching flack, you know you're over the target here. Story coming out of government slaves about how the corporate media is still playing with approval polls. We saw them doing that all during the election, all during the campaign, the primaries and everything. Oh, Hillary is leading by a huge amount. It's going to be a landslide, and nobody likes Donald Trump. And they're still doing it as part of this organized campaign to make it look like Donald Trump is really not the legitimate president of the United States of America. And they're still doing it. So, of course, we put up a poll at our website. Do you approve of Donald Trump? 95% yes. But don't take my word for it. Talk to people around you. That is the most powerful way to get around corporate media and government propaganda. Is just talk to people about what's going on. Share information. And just anybody who says, well, I saw it on TV. And said, is that the same TV that told you Saddam had weapons of mass destruction? Corporate media has created its own credibility. Some people are still clinging to it because they don't like the alternative reality that they have been lied to their entire lives. They don't want to admit they were made complete and total fools of by the government and the corporate media. So they're still kind of clinging tenuously, but it's a weak grip, and it's not going to take much to pry them loose. Get them to open their eyes, take the red pill, whatever metaphor you want to use here. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog, Fake News, the fake stream media devours itself. And yeah, we're starting to see that, where with these huge embarrassments, especially about that dossier with Donald Trump and the prostitutes and everything, they're pointing fingers at each other. Well, we only ran it because BuzzFeed ran it, and BuzzFeed ran it because they're owned by NBC, and NBC said, well, we don't want to put it on our network, so we're going to do this, and we're going to have that. And they got desperate, and they got reckless, and they made a foolish mistake, and now they're trying to shift the blame. Anything good that happens, they'll take credit for it, just like politicians. Any mistakes are made, oh, it's somebody else's fault. You know, Russia's to blame. Somehow Russia's to blame. Now, let's start looking at the wars, because there's a lot going on. There's a very alarming story that came out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. And apparently, they had a contributor who's actually here in the United States in Nevada, and with a telephoto lens, he caught a practice training dogfight over Nevada near the Groom Lake facility. And apparently he had a very powerful telephoto lens that was on his camera. And the two planes involved, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let the suspense build. And I'll be back with this after these words, station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're talking about this article that's over in the Daily Mail in Great Britain, and it's illustrated with photographs. And apparently somebody in Nevada spotted a training dogfight taking place above the Groom Lake area. One of the planes was an F-16, which makes perfect sense. The other one was a Russian Sukhoi 27P Flanker B, which has never been officially imported into the United States. Officially, it shouldn't be here. Now, the Daily Mail is out there saying this may be proof that America is preparing for war with Russia by dogfighting an F-16 with a Russian jet. I have a somewhat different concern, and that has to do with the desire for the United States to have some kind of a false flag they can blame on Russia. We know about those Hungarian tanks that Ukraine bought to use as a possible false flag of a Russian invasion. And now we're finding out there is a Russian fighter jet painted in Russian colors in the possession of the United States. It's a deniable asset. Oh, no, we never had a Sukhoi. They could send that Russian plane to shoot something important down, like Air Force One, with Donald Trump on board, and try and start the war that way. Imagine the sneakiest, dirtiest, most underhanded, double-crossed, dirty trick you could ever think of, and then understand the U.S. government has already thought of far worse to do. And they're willing to do it. They're desperate. They're in a panic. Now, Gordon Duff had an interview on Press TV, and he's out there saying that at this point, the United States government has no credibility in the Middle East, which is certainly true, and actually I think it applies to pretty much the entire world at this point. And certainly within the context of the Middle East, prior to 9/11, the U.S. at least tried to maintain a posture of being an impartial and objective arbiter between Israel and everybody Israel hated. That was part of the petrodollar deal. Following 9/11, Israel's arrogance shot up, and the U.S. government's willingness to say no vanished completely. And in the intervening years, the United States has come to be seen as Israel's poodle, for lack of a better description. Hillary was poised to continue that proud tradition, but Donald Trump, despite his obviously pro-Israel rhetoric, which I get a lot of emails about, I think once he starts directly interacting with Israel's government, and he sees the reality behind that corporate media propaganda that he spent his entire life soaking in, I think his enthusiasm for Israel is going to rapidly decline. And that was why Israel was just so opposed to Trump. They wanted Hillary. They wanted a guaranteed done deal, not somebody who might actually step back and say, you know, I don't think that's a good idea. Now, you remember Jimmy Carter, after his term in office, he wrote a book, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid, at which point he was denounced as an anti-Semite. And while he was going on around talking about the book, and he basically said, you have to look at the reality of what's going on. They're being robbed of their own property. That's what's happening in the West Bank. And the people in the United States never know about this. They don't know what's really going on. There is no criticism of Israel. in the United States, certainly not in the corporate media. Obviously, Carter's comments were before the rise of the independent media, because we're willing to be critical about any government that behaves badly anywhere on planet Earth. But that American corporate media that never dares criticize Israel is where Donald Trump has gotten most of his impression about Israel and Palestine. Now, he already knows that the corporate media is dishonest and lying and deceptive. He got a real crash course on that during the campaign. The next step is for him to take a moment and say, okay, looking back over the last 20 to 30 years, what else has the corporate media been less than forthright about? It's only a matter of time before he does that. Trump's a guy who likes to think a lot. Now, over in Great Britain, last October, the media there were making a big deal about how the police were called to University College London amid claims that pro-Palestinian protesters had harassed an event with an Israeli speaker. And the corporate media over there went wild, anti-Semitism on our college campuses and so forth and so on. Well, here we are all these months later, and Jerry Lewis of Hampstead Synagogue has now admitted that it was Jewish groups that provoked the confrontation so they could call the police, disrupt everything, and then scream, oh, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. And this gentleman from Hampstead Synagogue was very honest in saying, the game plan is simple. Cause a ruckus, claim discrimination, and then ask for donations and funding. Remember when Democracy Now! Had that former member of the Knesset on the air honestly admit that the screaming of anti-Semitism is just a trick to shut people up when they ask questions that Israel doesn't have a good answer for. So, anyway. All right, let's see. We're going to go ahead and grab a phone call from Ed in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just want to make this quick. I used to work up in that area, and they're called the Regals. Even 30 years ago, they had MiG-21s and MiG-23s, and they dogfight all the time. It is standard procedure. They have Russian planes up there.
Yeah, I understand that they've acquired Russian planes. During Vietnam, North Vietnam literally had to put guards on their own pilots because U.S. high-flying planes would fly over and drop leaflets offering a reward for any pilot who would defect to the West with his Russian jet. And apparently a lot of North Vietnamese pilots took him up on that deal. But the issue is that this flanker, according to this British media, is not officially supposed to be in the United States of America. And so the fact, the possibility of malevolent use of these Russian assets has to be addressed in this run-up to confrontation with Russia.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that they've always had them. They've always been dogfighting together, and you see them all the time up there. I probably shouldn't even be saying anything, but
no, actually, you shouldn't.
You know.
You're giving away the secrets there. I remember in Chuck Yeager's book where he was talking about one time where he was asked to evaluate one of these Russian MiGs that had been stolen by a North Vietnamese pilot, and he said it was a bit of a clunker. But obviously, Russia's aviation industry has caught up with the West now. Their newer aircraft is just...
No, actually, it's been public and it's been written about, yeah, they've been doing that a long. They usually get them from the Middle East, from client states.
Okay. All right, well, listen, thank you very much.
I'll let you go.
All right, thank you very much for that one here. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network, and we're going to go back to the phones. Brendan in San Francisco, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, did you see the news that Manning, his sentence has been commuted?
Yeah, I did, and we had a caller into the show just a little while ago, and I think it's wonderful news. And like I said, I think the next step is we need to get Leonard Peltier out and possibly some of these other people. It's time to stop treating these people who were acting in what they thought was the best interest of the United States like criminals, while the people who are criminals are being protected. That is not a healthy situation.
Yeah, I can't help but think that Mr. Barry Soretto knew that Trump would probably do it and even further damage the myth of Obama or his so-called legacy. I really do think that he was preempting Trump's humane side. I could almost guarantee Trump would have done that.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that may have been Obama's motive. He's trying to steal as much thunder from Trump as he can. But regardless of the motive, it's a good thing that it finally did happen, and Manning's going to get on out. I mean, 35-year sentence for this, and it's just utterly, utterly ridiculous. And like I said, if Obama really wants a legacy that people are actually going to want to look back at with any kind of respect, he needs a few more pardons. Leonard Peltier, Mumia Al-Jabbar, and Julian Assange, and Edward Snowden. Just clean the slate, and let's all move forward from here.
In that order. Real quick, I wanted to do a movie recommendation I saw last night on Netflix. You have to see this. I'm going to put this in the category of what was that Mel Gibson movie where he was a Scottish
Braveheart.
rebel? This movie, in my opinion, now keep in mind, Mike, I studied filmmaking. It's in San Francisco. This movie is called The Physician, and it goes into, it's based on a novel, but I guarantee you it will satisfy, and I'm a very tough critic. The Physician got the gentleman that played Gandhi in it. It's from 2013. That was just a quick recommendation, but I had a clarification hopefully you could make. You reference Soros or the New World Order blending everyone together. I wonder if you could clarify that, because the way I see that, it's more of a weaponized migration. And there is a gentleman I found on YouTube that does wonderful excerpts from the Quran and how the stages of infiltration and waiting till your numbers grow and then strike. He goes through a very methodical explanation in the Quran. And when I hear you say their plan of blending us all together, I'm wondering if you're being facetious. Can we get a clarification on that? Because I'm sure this is a weaponized migration, sleeper cells, the whole nine.
Well, the clarification is, from the point of view of the globalists, the New World Order people, they want to just blur everybody together in order to remove from us our sense of identity, our cultural identity, our historical identity, our regional identity. Because if we don't have a strong sense of who we are, then it's easier to control us through propaganda. Now, that being said, some of the people who are going on these migrations may have their own agendas that may tie in to things that are written in the Quran or things that are written in other various so-called holy texts, because that idea of proselytizing and growing your faith is hardly unique to the Quran. There's a lot of similar stuff in the Bible and the Old Testament, which by extension includes the Torah. Almost all of the major religions do encourage their followers to expand out and take over territory. Pope Alexander VI, when he wasn't busy having orgies in the Vatican, was busy literally handing out parts of the world to Spain and Portugal that weren't really his to give.
Yes, that clears it up. So it's one component of a larger recipe to blend us all together. I totally agree with you, but then the final stage is the releasing the dog, so to speak.
I don't think that was part of Soros' plan. It's, I think, from his point of view, an unanticipated after effect. Because, if if the whole world ignites in racial war and the human population is devastated, then there really isn't much point in having a global government if you don't have a huge tax base.
So just based on my own research, there's an actual term, and I got on a little unprepared today. I wanted to reference specifics about this gentleman. He's a Christian pastor who's referencing the Quran. He's using their own text to explain what their plan is ultimately. And there's a specific name for the process of it's like combat or weaponized migration, and the term is quite familiar. It's
conversion.
I have to believe this. Say it again.
Conversion. Or that's what the Christians call it.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we're just replaying the past because they've done it before. I mean, they're making it all the way into Europe and the U.S. with help from our illegal government. I just think this is where I'm going to focus my attention. I've sent you a couple videos from Call of Duty Goddess. She did some really good work on Eric Holder and Lynch. Their wives are best friends, and I was hoping I'd see them posted on whatreallyhappened.com, but I'm just curious, are you getting any of those mails?
I'll have to go back. I'll have to go back and take a look and see if things are caught in the filter or something like that. But this mass migration and this pushing of Muslims into Europe, for example, there are other parties who see an advantage in it. Remember, Israel's goal is Eretz Israel, the Israel described in the Bible, from the Nile to the Euphrates. But all that land has got people on it. And Israel probably thinks it's a lot easier to convince them to move to Europe and then take over all that land than to actually have to risk their own children in outright wars of conquest on those same regions. So there's another player who's in there that would be very much interested in getting all the Muslims to basically crowd into Europe and leave all that land empty behind them.
Right. You're always saying who stands to gain, and we know who does stand to gain. And yeah, it's like, let's clear them out and make it easier for the folks that stand to gain, and we know who they are. Well, listen, Mike, I'll try to do a little bit more homework and be prepared. I like the idea of referencing videos that are pretty well vetted, you know. And this woman, Call of Duty Goddess, she's doing really good work. In fact, she's called into the show. I remember hearing her voice. But I'm going to try and find this pastor that's doing really great dissection of the Quran and using their own words to help us understand this weaponized migration.
Okay, but before you do that, remember that it's common practice for the practitioners of a religion to selectively quote the text of the other religion to push whatever their point of view is. And we know there's a lot of editing that goes on in those religious areas. I mean, before the invention of movable type printing, you would have been amazed how many different versions of the Bible there were all over Europe. That's what led to the creation of the King James Bible, was an attempt to reconcile just how far afield some of these scriptures had evolved over the centuries. Anyway, listen, I need to let you go, Brendan, and we're going to start with Alan in California. Thank you. We're going to start with Alan in California. I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break.
Hello. Hi, Michael?
Yes, you're on the air.
Hi there. Hallelujah. 3 more days, huh?
Yes.
All right, good. I just wanted to get your opinion on something that just upsetted me a little bit about the Barack Obama birth certificate that Jeff Arpaio proved pretty much that it's pretty much a false document. Anyway, I'm kind of upset because, you know, if anybody else would have produced a false birth certificate and used it to get a job and so on, I mean, that's multiple.
Yeah, but there's a benign explanation for that, and I actually put it up in a story that's permanently linked to the top of the main page called Obama the Love Child. And if you'll stay here, we'll go through it again after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Alan in California about this lingering issue over Barack Obama's birth certificate. And it actually has a very benign explanation. Barack Obama was born back during the free love days of the 60s. And the story really is that his real biological father is Frank Marshall Davis, who's even mentioned in Obama's book about his early years as a family friend. And what it was is that Barack Obama's mother met Frank Marshall Davis when they were both students at the University of Hawaii. And Frank Marshall Davis was paying for his college education as a pornographer. And Obama's mother was one of his models. And nature took its course, and little Barry was born. Now, that was a very common occurrence back then, and women who had had a child out of wedlock who then married, again, somebody else, found it was a lot easier to simply go back and request a new updated birth certificate amending the father's name than to try and go through that long formal process of an adoption. And that's all that happened. When Barack's mother married Barack Sr., she simply went to the Hawaii records and said, I need a new birth certificate, I need to change the name of the father. And there was a nod and a wink, and they did that. And it happened all the time back then, probably still does. And that's the explanation. And if you look at a photo of President Obama and Frank Marshall Davis, they look almost identical. Barack Obama does not look anything at all like Barack Obama Sr. It's that obvious out there. So I confirmed living on Oahu. Hang on, I confirmed living here on Oahu that Obama was born here. The hospital records, announcements in the local press, and we know people who knew the Obama family and confirmed it to us. I even had one of Barry's school teachers on the show a few years back. So it's a great deal of nothing there, and it really needs to be dropped.
That doesn't explain though the exact stars and numbers used from that other birth certificate that were on his from the press conference. Did you happen to watch that?
You know, I didn't pay attention to it because there's nothing there. Okay. Thank you very much for the phone call, Alan, and we're going to switch over to Alex in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, you don't sound well. You poor thing. I hope you get better.
Well, I am getting better. I'm actually feeling a lot better. My voice is a lot better than it was yesterday, and I figured another 2-3 days, I'll be back to battery.
Okay. Hey, I was just watching the YouTube this past weekend. I just opened up that file again where Wesley Clark, General Wesley Clark, was stating that the Pentagon, one of the guys at the Pentagon, they said they had a plan to go into 7 countries in the Middle East.
Yes.
And I think that whoever told him that and whoever made up that plan are our enemies, and they need to be tried for war crimes. Those are war crimes.
Certainly the way the wars were executed, they were not just wars. They were wars of conquest, and by default, that makes them war crimes.
Yeah, and what was the purpose?
Money, control of the oil. All of those nations needed to be constrained to trade their oil only for U.S. dollars, because that foreign demand for U.S. dollars to buy resources with and to do cross-border trade and banking is the only thing holding the value of the dollar up internationally right now.
Yeah, it's kind of concerning. I hope that Trump doesn't privatize Social Security or Medicare, and what do you think about that?
Well, privatization is always a bad idea because the private corporations who take it over to make a profit. I think the government should be managing our Social Security and our medical care, but it's got to be under full, transparent civilian oversight so that it doesn't get corrupted and politicized and plundered like we saw with Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it would sure be a stimulus in some way, somehow, his new health plan, could save us money every month. A lot of, like $300 or $400.
Yeah, it would. We're paying way too much for medical care. Got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, getting back to the war zones, Iraq forces are close to the full liberation of eastern Mosul from ISIS. So the plan for a new Kurdistan to be carved out of Iraq, Syria, and Turkey appears on the verge of collapse. Now, remember back on New Year's, there was a terror attack at a nightclub in Istanbul, and a lot of people suggested it might be a warning of some kind for Turkey to stop cozying up to Russia and come back to the U.S. sphere of influence. And now Turkish Deputy Prime Minister Numan Kurtulmuş is saying that this nightclub attack involved an intelligence organization. Not a terrorist organization, but an intelligence organization. A nation state was behind this. I think in hindsight, we're not really surprised about it. That sort of thing goes on all the time. Now then, turning to our ability to fight war. According to the latest report from the Pentagon, the F-35, we love picking on the F-35, has 276 acknowledged deficiencies and counting. And at this point, it's declared unfit for combat operations. Now, the Air Force last year, just in imperialistic fiat, said it's ready to go, and they've actually started deploying them, even though they don't actually do anything other than look very impressive on the runway. Now, looking at all this news about how terrible America's weapons are, we have to hold out the possibility that part of the plan to try and goad Russia and China into war with the United States is to basically convince them that we're not that big a threat and a danger. And we have to always hold open that possibility. But there seems to be an awful lot of problems out there where ships have to get towed. But at this point, I think a lot of people are justified, certainly Donald Trump is, in saying, yeah, we've got to have a strong defense, but why can't we make it cost effective? As opposed to the current system, which prides itself on how much money it can pour into a program. I keep going on back to that wonderful movie, Pentagon Wars. Kelsey Grammer, I think, Graham Grammer. Anyway, he plays this officer who's in charge of this defense program, and the film opens with him giving a speech to a congressional hearing about the cost overruns on the Bradley. And he's out there saying, you know, we were able to beat the Soviet Union because we could shovel the money into the fire faster than they could. And we laugh at it because we recognize that does seem to be the attitude. And for anybody who has actually had contact with military procurement and spending, you just know it's amazing. It's almost shocking. Most of us around here, we have money that we control with an eyedropper. A little drip here for the rent, a little drip here for the car payment, a little drip over there for medical costs. These defense contractors have fire hoses, and they are not timid about using them. And there is a huge amount of waste. I saw it when I was doing some work. Robert Ebel and Associates actually did some productions for a government contractor. And it was just a whole new experience for all those people. I sort of expected it because when I was back with NASA, I'd seen more of the same thing. Not with NASA, but within the Air Force, because we were sharing a facility at the time. But it's amazing. You have to look at the way weapons are developed in Russia and China. Their goal is cost-effective, efficient weapons, because the more effective they are, the fewer you lose. The less expensive they are, the easier it is to replace them. And in every war in history, the country that runs out of wealth first loses, is really what it comes on down to. Now, speaking of wealth, the wealth inequality has gotten out of control. And there's a story here from the Daily Sheeple about how just 8 men have more wealth than the bottom 50% of all human beings. And people are getting very unhappy about that because it's not like these individuals get their wealth just out of thin air. They get it by taking it away from the rest of us. Now, in some cases, that's the way capitalism is supposed to work. And I often hold up the example of a Steven Spielberg or a Steve Jobs or somebody like that, or James Cameron, my favorite all-time director. They make movies, and I want to buy the pay-per-view to see it. I want to buy the Blu-ray, especially the 3D version. And they get rich because they made a product people want to buy. That's how it's supposed to work. The ones I have a problem with are these people who game the system, who lobby politicians for special laws that bias and weight the system toward them. And eventually the system becomes so unbalanced, this is what's giving rise to populism and nationalism. Because people want to take back control of their nation from the money junkies. And that's really what's at the heart of it all. Now, there's a story coming out of MarketWatch about how investors are bracing for a massive stock market sell-off next month. Basically, they're saying as soon as Trump is sworn on in, they're expecting things to come apart. And we know that our economy is a thin shell. There's nothing really there. But I think they've been propping it up with all this instantly created money out of the Federal Reserve. And now that Trump is in office, they're going to let it collapse and blame him for it, which is exactly what they did to Herbert Hoover in the 1930s. And Herbert Hoover did not create the Depression of the 1930s. It was created for him. Remember when the bankers tried to organize a fascist coup against Franklin Roosevelt, and Major General Smedley Butler blew the whistle on that. And Roosevelt wanted to round all these bankers up and throw them in jail, and they all sat back and said, you touch one of us, we'll crash the economy and blame you for it. And Roosevelt couldn't do a thing about all these Wall Street money junkies who wanted to kick him out of office. Until war with Europe actually broke out, and then he nailed most of them under the Trading with the Enemies Act. The one problem we need to be aware of, we're supposed to have a government chosen by the people. And we got a hard lesson about just how hard it is to get that last year. But behind that, we need to realize how much unelected power these giant banks have. And maybe it's time to start breaking those up as well. Maybe it's time to end the Federal Reserve. Congress can rescind that charter anytime they want. Certainly, in the coming crash, our better educated, more aware, more skeptical general population is not going to be fooled when the corporate media says, oh, this is all Donald Trump's fault. We had a wonderful economy at the end of 2016, and Trump just wrecked it. They're not going to believe that. We all know how much the government lied about the unemployment numbers. We know how much they lied about the rate of inflation. We know who's to blame. We know what is to blame. That Ponzi scheme at the heart of it all, private central banks issuing the public currency as a loan at interest. It's a system of enslavement, ruled by compound interest. And it's no more legitimate a form of governance than rule by divine right or rule by slavery. And like those former failed systems, it only works as long as the population is brainwashed into believing this is the way life is supposed to be. And that brainwashing is finally starting to wear away. And people are saying, there is something fundamentally wrong with private central banking. It's great for the private central bankers. That's why the Federal Reserve is resisting an audit. They don't want you to know how much real wealth they have sucked out of the population over the last 100 years. It's a terrible deal for the rest of us. We spend our lives in debt servitude. Now, Donald Trump, coming into office, is looking at a minimum of 10% cut to spending in general and letting go 20% of federal workers. Now, the bureaucracy has already tried to offset that. They've been on a hiring binge this last month. Just any little job they can think of. Oh, hire this person, get them in, get them in. So now they've got a disposable segment of their employees that they can let go in response to Donald Trump's request for a federal worker reduction. And the career insiders are protected. Now, General Motors is getting ready to announce a $1 billion investment in U.S. auto factories and an additional 1,000 jobs following Donald Trump's criticism of Mexico's imports. And I imagine Donald Trump going after Germany didn't hurt either. But all it's going to take to bring manufacturing back to this country is a change in the tax policies. And you need to remember, it was under President George W. Bush the tax code was changed to financially incentivize corporations to offshore manufacturing. It's part of that global New World Order design. We want all the manufacturing of electronics here, all the cars here, all the agriculture here, so that the whole world is dependent on the rest of the world. Nobody can be free and independent and self-sufficient. Because dependency is slavery. And all you got to do is change those tax laws, talk about tariffs, and you can create a financial climate in which these corporations will gladly bring the manufacturing jobs back here. All it takes is the political will to do it. We're 3 days away from a change in the leadership. And like I said, when Donald Trump takes the oath of office, our jobs are not over here in the independent media and among the American people. They're just beginning. Donald Trump wants to bring real change to our country, and he's opposed by this oligarchical establishment that has fed off of us for 30 years or more. So, for Donald Trump to be able to do anything, we, the American people, are going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder with our President Donald Trump and glare through those windows into the offices of the representatives and senators and send them a message. You work for us. You don't work for Israel. You don't work for Big Pharma. You don't work for the military-industrial complex. You work for us. And if you forget that, we will do to you next election what we did to Hillary Clinton this election. We will work to overcome the election fraud, and we will get you out of your job. All of us working together got Trump into office. All of us working together can turn Trump's White House into a really effective tool to bring some real change to this country. Make America Great is not just an empty campaign promise and rhetoric. It is now possible. We've known for years this country was in serious trouble. Trump winning the election opened the door to the possibility for change. We, the American people, are going to have to step through it. If we abandon Donald Trump, if we leave him all by himself, he's not going to be able to do anything. We're all going to have to work together and follow his lead. Now then, down in Venezuela, as you know, along with all of their other troubles, they got talked into this experiment in trying to move toward a cashless society. The high denomination bills have now been banned. And Venezuela's new highest denomination bills barely cover the cost of a Big Mac at the local McDonald's. Every country where this has been tried so far is in serious, serious trouble. But the push for the cashless society isn't to benefit society. It's to benefit the bankers, to make you dependent on those banks for every single financial transaction, to make sure that what you're doing with what is at least tentatively called your money can be spied on by the government that's absolutely terrified that you might go and do something you're not supposed to do. Now, as you know, the fight about Obamacare is on. Trump's administration has announced they've got a new plan to put in its place. There's going to be a safety net for those who lost their existing plans to Obamacare and may not be able to get back with their original insurance carriers because they're older and they're sicker and so forth and so on. Remember when Obama said, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan? Big lie. And he's leaving Trump to clean up the mess. But Nancy Pelosi is still out there defending Obamacare. Remember, Nancy Pelosi was the one who said they had to pass it before they could read it and see what was in it, which was one of the stupidest remarks to come out of a member of Congress in recent recollection. And this article over here in the Daily Sheeple is saying people are starting to wonder if she's suffering from dementia or if she's on the same fracking contaminated water or prescription antidepressants as Maxine Waters. That they can say these incredibly stupid things. Just amazing. All right. Apparently, Trump's offer of a fast-track post-Brexit trade deal with Great Britain has been welcomed by Downing Street, and it was made in response to the European Union saying that Great Britain can exit, but they have to still allow open borders for refugees to come on in, and they still have to pay taxes to Brussels, which, of course, those are the two reasons Great Britain wanted to leave. So I guess they're calling it Brexit Light. You can convince yourself you've left, but nobody ever really leaves the European Union. Taking advantage of my cold voice here for dramatic effect. So Trump came on in, and he basically yanked the rug out from Brussels on that one. Boy, the globalists are going to hate him. They are just, they're seeing their dreams of a golden throne of planet Earth warmed by their particular derriere vanish like smoke. Merkel says she's ready to fight a generational battle with Trump to preserve what she calls liberal democracy and trade. Apparently, liberal democracy is you do what we tell you and pretend you're free. And trade, of course, means global open trade. But basically, she's still fighting for the globalist agenda. And I don't know how she thinks she's going to be able to win re-election next year. She's probably hired all of Hillary's vote riggers so far and is going to put out a Craigslist ad for more of those. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break, and we'll be back after these few words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Here we're going to go to the phones and start with Sherry in Fredericksburg. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, you used the term a couple shows ago, meritocracy.
Yes.
I wasn't familiar with that, so I looked it up, and I've learned that this is a society of people who are selected to hold power according to their abilities, a ruling class. Kind of, I don't know if it's like an oligarchy, but anyway.
No.
I got to thinking.
No, hang on.
Okay.
Let's stop for a second. The two are very different. An oligarchy is a group of people who rule a society for their own benefit. A meritocracy is the people best qualified to do the job get selected to do the job. And that's the fundamental difference.
Okay, I don't know about this best able to, because I got to thinking about the difference between the monopolies in Wall Street and the retailers in Wall Street, and I see that the retailers, they can compete against each other, but the monopolies are what's worrying me, because I'm experiencing things that are kind of scary. There are both monopolies and non-monopolies on Wall Street, but the monopolies are taking away my options and replacing it with these divisive tactics that find ways to siphon money out of my pocket.
Yeah, they definitely do. That's an oligarchy. And to illustrate why I favor a meritocracy, let's say that you get sick and you go into the hospital. Do you not want the best qualified doctor operating on you, or are you okay with some intern who just got their medical degree a week ago?
Yeah. So, okay, I see. Well, the problem is it got me looking at monopolies closer, and I have less and less alternative to turn to these days. It's like being chained, and when they start yanking the chains, this is the monopolies now. They're squeezing us. My heart and mind must follow this, and there is nothing good for us in the future.
No, you're absolutely right. That's why monopolies used to be illegal in this country. In fact, technically they still are. And there's already talk that Donald Trump, when he comes into office, could use the existing anti-monopoly laws to break up those giant media organizations. because originally in this country, corporations, companies, retailers were not allowed to form monopolies because of the way they would abuse the public. Whether it was called monopoly or a trust or a cartel or whatever, everybody understands that a monopolistic entity is going to be bad for ordinary consumers. There's a wonderful video that we put up at whatreallyhappened.com about 10 conspiracies that conspiracy theories turned out to be true, and they talk about the De Beers cartel, where when the South African diamond mines were first discovered, it was realized there were so many diamonds there that it made them virtually worthless. And so these British businessmen who owned these mines united together to form the De Beers mining cartel and simply said, if we control the flow of the diamonds, we can maintain the illusion that they're worth a lot of money. But they're not. Yeah. They're not rare. There's enough for every shopping mall to have 3 or 4 jewelry stores full of them. There are enough for every married woman to have one on her finger. It's a big giant hoax, but it's caused by a monopoly. Thank you for the call, Sherry. We got to take a break for station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to go back to the telephones now. Kyle in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello? Kyle, are you there?
This is Tony. Hi, this is Tony. I don't know if you're looking.
I was looking. Well, we'll go with you, Tony, for right now. Okay, apparently we lost Kyle. Tony, what's on your mind?
Nothing. I called earlier to talk about the migrants and how the European Union is led by an unelected body, and it's similar to our country with the CIA. That aside, to bop on over to another topic, you had mentioned something about, well, you're always talking about vaccines and autism. And there's an interesting article about SIDS deaths being reduced by 75% by having a fan in the room. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, especially if it's filtered.
Yes, I think it comes down to air circulation. We don't know why or how it works, but it was in the New York Times or the Washington Compost. But it's reputable.
Well, here's the problem with that. Sudden infant death syndrome is sort of a blanket explanation for a brand new infant all of a sudden dying. And it covers a wide range of possible causes. At one point, there was concern that if babies go face down on the mattress, they couldn't breathe through the mattress, so now baby mattresses are designed to allow airflow. And obviously, if there's contaminants in the air, that can be an issue as well, provoking some kind of a reaction. But the issue of the link between SIDS and vaccines has to do with a very obvious anaphylactic reaction. And most of those cases, the parents will report that even before the baby was put to bed, that they seem to be in some kind of distress, and they put the baby to bed saying, tomorrow we're going to go to the doctor. And they get up the next morning, and the child has passed, which is a horrible tragedy to have to go through. So it's like the term cancer actually covers a multitude of different conditions and diseases.
Yeah, I mean, it could have something to do with reducing fever. That's always a common reaction with an adverse vaccine reaction. High fevers, possibly air circulation cooling the baby down.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But I guess the question is, why wouldn't they be handing out fans instead of Infamil or this garbage that they hand you after you give childbirth?
Well,
because some literature on it, nobody knows about it.
Well, because vaccines are a $30 billion a year business, and word to come on out that the vaccines are actually harmful and have been known to be harmful for decades, the civil litigation would absolutely destroy the industry. Now, the U.S. government, of course, threw their hat in with the vaccine makers with the Homeland Security Act, which actually included a provision to indemnify vaccine makers from being sued for any harm caused by their products, because these vaccine makers are such wonderful campaign donors every election cycle. And so now, if you are the parents of a vaccine-damaged child, you have to submit a claim at what's called the vaccine court, which is actually covered by taxpayer money, not the vaccine companies. And because there was this growing surge of parents filing claims, the vaccine court said, help, help, we need to prove that there's no link between autism and vaccines. And the CDC cooked up this report, which has been since exposed as having been a fraud, specifically for the purpose of allowing the vaccine court to tell all these parents of vaccine-damaged children, oh, your child was just born that way, the vaccine companies are innocent, you don't get any money to help take care of your child. And it's a big, giant ripoff, and it's been allowed to grow to such a scale that if it were ever fully exposed to the eyes of the American people, it would not only bring down that vaccine industry itself, but the government that very obviously protected and covered up for them.
Right, and you know that vaccine court, even though the odds are nearly insurmountable in winning over there, they still have paid out billions of dollars to damaged families, and this is, you know, that's a small fraction.
Yeah, it really is.
Tried to get a settlement.
And the issue in the long term is that because nobody will honestly deal with the link between this ever larger number of vaccines that are now mandated by the government and the exponential growth of children diagnosed as autistic after they get those vaccines. By the year 2030, half of all American children will be diagnosed as autistic. And that means there's going to be half the population unavailable to the workforce after the year 2030. And a significant portion of the available workforce is going to be tied up caring for all these autistic children. And then there are not going to be enough workers left over to work in the factories and farms and fields and so forth and so on. And so this has to be dealt with. And I'm absolutely delighted that Donald Trump has appointed Robert Kennedy to chair this Commission on Vaccine Safety. And Robert Kennedy has now accepted. And the vaccine companies are just in an absolute panic right now, because if it ever all comes out that they have known all the way back to the 1940s that there was a problem, we're not talking just civil litigation against the corporation. We're talking criminal prosecution of all these executives. Yeah, I mean, let alone all the parents who are going to kick down the front doors on those office buildings and drag these people out to burn them alive at the stakes.
That would be wonderful, and I'm glad you mentioned about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I've been following him for quite some time. Real quick, the autism rate in Israel is rather low. I was reading an article earlier about it. It's 3 per 1,000, I believe, is the rate. Is very, very low.
Yes.
And they were looking as to why the autism rate among Orthodox Arabs and Israelis are even lower than that. So that's an interesting point. Well, I'll let you talk about that. And if you would link to something about that, the article about air circulation and SIDS, I think it's an important thing, and it could save a lot of children's lives. Thank you, Mike, for your time, and I hope you and Claire are doing well. And I like the new voice, personally.
Well, Claire doesn't, so I'm working to get back to my normal lyric baritone. All right, we're going to let you go.
Take care.
And one of the reasons that we have seen this push for mandatory vaccinations without any exemptions at all is not just to maximize the profit to the vaccine company, but to avoid having an unvaccinated population that can be pointed to as indicating that there's a problem. The Amish refuse vaccines. They don't get autism. There's been one documented case of autism in an Amish child that the pro-vaccine people were out there saying, see, there's nothing, but the vaccine, they still get autism and everything. Turned out that child had been adopted by an Amish family and had had the mandatory vaccines before the adoption. So that's the whole idea, is to get everybody on the vaccines, and then there's no unvaccinated population that can be used to draw a comparison. And it's all driven by that money, $30 billion a year. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. And we're going to take another phone call. Mark in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can.
First of all, I want to dispense with the pleasantries. I've been listening to your show for a couple of years now, usually a day behind because I watch it on YouTube, courtesy of Ron Gibson.
Okay.
You forgive me if I'm a little bit starstruck, because talking to you, sir, is like talking to, I mean, you're like the Jimi Hendrix of truth to me. You know, this is like, you're Bruce Lee to me, sir. So I'm a little nervous, but I really, really appreciate what you do.
You're going to turn my head. You're going to turn me into an egomaniac if you keep up that nonsense. And
yeah, I doubt you can be an egomaniac with all you.
Oh yes, I can.
On your shoulder.
Oh yes, I can. All he needs is a little encouragement, and I'll be right up there.
I'm the one that wrote you and said, I don't know about the resemblance between you and Dwayne Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Kind of more as an Orson Welles. I didn't think you'd read it because, you know, I know you're under the weather.
Okay. Well, I'm a little behind in the email. I get hundreds of emails every day, and I do try and read them all.
I'm sure. Well, you'll recognize it when you get it. I'm from your home. I'm in your hometown. Well, not your hometown, but I'm in California.
Okay.
And so, you know, I accept everybody's condolences. But real quick, the phrase buttercups and snowflakes, I don't want any of the conservatives out there to take this phrase lightly, because they are a very dangerous bunch. They may be sheltered people who get their feelings hurt by words, and, you know, the rainbow hair people and all of that on the left. But at the same time, whether they know it or not, they have a militarized set of allies, whether that be the radical feminists who would have voted for Hillary, even if they saw Hillary committing murder with their own eyes, they would vote for her just because allegedly she has certain parts of her anatomy that would make her a female.
Yeah.
Or in my case, I'm black. I don't use the term African American because there's nothing about Africa I really associate with. But I'm a black person of mixed race. I have Cherokee, I have Jewish and Puerto Rican in me. Most of my friends are black and Hispanic. I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley in California.
Okay.
But you and the other conservatives need to know that the Democratic Party, they have what I consider to be a militarized faction or militarized allies. If you're at all familiar with the trending, I don't do Twitter or anything, but if you're familiar with the whole meme that's going on, like with the rapper Snoop Dogg, the other famous rapper T.I., when they come out and voice their disapproval of any person of color supporting Trump, you know, the whole fake news thing about Trump being such a racist and such a, you know, dictator. It's amazing how these people practice all these dictatorial actions, but then they turn around and call the one person who I see is maybe going to stand up for freedom, they call him a dictator. I mean, this really has been a campaign of extreme hypocrisy. And what's really sad is I'm a Ron Paul supporter from 2010.
Mm-hmm, me too.
And in South Central LA and the San Fernando Valley, I could kind of pretty much roll around and campaign for Ron Paul and not be too much at risk in terms of my safety, because people here are so brain dead they didn't even know who Ron Paul was. But now with the media pushing this whole, you know, Donald Trump is worse than the devil type thing, sir, if I walked out of my house with a Ron Paul shirt, with a Donald Trump shirt, I would literally be a moving target for anyone, for any black, any Hispanic. They would just gladly do me harm or do my family harm or do my property harm. And so that's what I'm trying to get across to the other conservatives. These liberals, they've proven themselves to be dangerous. For instance, the thing in Chicago with the foreigners who, you know, I mean, we all know that was a hate crime, Mike.
Yes.
That was clearly a hate crime. And the way the mainstream media or the corporate media sort of just kind of belittles those actions like it's just, you know, a little bit of mischief or something, it shows how they're in alliance. So even if they're not actually toting guns and breaking into homes and doing things like thugs and gangbangers, their refusal to frown on that behavior, in my opinion, they're condoning it.
Yes, they are. They are. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I was just go ahead.
Yeah. Let me get a comment in here, and then I'll let you continue. The problem that we're dealing with is that Hillary Clinton ran her campaign as a personality cult. And so what we're dealing with here are basically some fanatically religious cultists. And they are dangerous. They're as dangerous as Jim Jones people were before the Kool-Aid. They're as dangerous as the Scientologists. They have been absolutely convinced they're serving a higher purpose, which makes it acceptable behavior to ignore the law, ignore ethics and morality, to torture people and so forth. I'm not minimizing the danger of these people, especially if they outnumber you 4-1. Okay, but the image of the snowflake and the buttercup is to basically underscore the fact that they're not functioning as rational adult human beings, but again, as these fanatical cultists.
Absolutely. You know, I've never really read the whole Art of War, but I'm sure there's something in there about never underestimating your enemy.
Yes.
And these people have proven themselves to be the enemy. I mean, sir, when I see a middle America soccer mom get out of her little, little whatever, her Prius, and take the Donald Trump sign from somebody's yard, I cringe just as much as when I see a group of thugs beating up someone who's just trying to get to a Donald Trump rally. It's the same behavior, and the way they choose to look the other way or condone that behavior is just, I mean, some soccer mom would never affiliate herself with gangbangers, but whether she knows it or not, doing what she's doing is almost the same thing. I mean, when these rappers get out and they have a First Amendment right to voice their opinion, but these guys actually have the power to tell other neighborhoods, take up arms and go to war. And you've seen it. You've seen the videos.
I have, but two factors you need to keep in mind. First of all, the people who were committing the violence at the Trump rallies were actually hired and paid to be there. And the second, as violent as individual liberals may be, from their behavior, it's very obvious that they lack any sense of discipline and willingness to work
I
coordinate.
Totally agree.
Which, so if it comes to
I totally agree. I think.
Okay.
I don't think. I mean, in actual combat, I totally feel they lack the discipline or any type of strategy to be any kind of a threat to like, let's say, veterans or real militia or something.
Yeah, they're a mob. They're a mob with no chain of command.
Yeah. I want all conservatives to just don't turn your back on them, man, because imagine if somebody calls 911 dispatcher for help, and that dispatcher is one of these never Trumpers. Can you imagine? They would be like, oh, so you're in a house and you might be unarmed and there's home invaders outside? Sure, we'll get somebody to you. And I really think they will just take their time getting help. I truly hope that this what you said, this cultism, whatever it is, whatever disease they're on, I hope it doesn't really leak into a lot of the fabric of like law enforcement and military nationwide, because it's ugly and it's completely un-American. It totally goes against any constitutional type of republic, and they don't care. I mean, you got Meryl Streep and you got that guy John Lewis. But then you got Snoop Dogg telling these gangbangers, beat up every black who supported Trump. And, to them, we're like the worst sellouts. We're traitors. We're like, the last time I heard, I didn't have any boss. I didn't have someone, that tells me what to think and who to vote for. And, but with them, either you go along with the spiel or you're an enemy. And there's no talking to them. There's no rationalization, because all they want to do is scream and yell. You've seen the video where the Black Lives Matter took over the Bernie Sanders speech.
Yeah.
And the Black Lives Matter people just totally went up and took his mic. That's them. That's them in a nutshell. I mean, that's Hillary Clinton. That's the fake news. That's the whole, Putin was an internet cafe downtown LA, and he just totally hacked into everything. And the only reason Trump won is because of, it's just crazy.
Well,
Listen,
the reason
really
it's crazy, the reason it's crazy is because control over the American people has all been an illusion for decades, and they dropped the card out of the sleeve, and now we all know it's been an illusion, and they don't know any other way to get it back. Anyway, I need to let you go. We got to do a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. Pardon me. And we're going to take a phone call from Steve in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Michael. I think you and I have the same illness going on right now, so stand by here for my voice. But, hey, I was thinking about this whole Obama thing, commuting the sentence of Chelsea Manning, and it occurred to me probably a couple of weeks prior, Julian Assange spoke and agreed to be extradited to the United States if Chelsea Manning would be released and have a sentence pardoned or commuted. And so I think the other side of that coin is I don't think that Obama did it because he thought it was the right thing to do. I think they just want their hands on Assange.
I think that other caller was right, that probably Obama wants to steal Trump's thunder because Trump would have issued pardons.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I still hope that Snowden is on the list to be pardoned because he did the right thing. He is a hero.
Yes.
He is a hero, that man.
Absolutely.
That's it, Michael.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Will in Cincinnati. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hey, you sound better today, by the way.
Yeah, I'm getting better. Another couple of days, I'll be fine.
Away at it. A quick comment on that topic you were just on. Not only to steal Trump's thunder, but to give it a headline to draw our attention away from all the other commutes, which we really don't know much about.
Well, most of them are drug dealers.
Yeah, so it's a nice little distraction there. I wanted to call something to your attention. Don't know if you heard about it or not, but it was a pretty big deal to me here. And we had a student at Ohio State, and maybe you heard about him, Tarek Underreiner. He was the treasurer of the Buckeyes for Concealed Carry.
Okay.
He testified before the legislature last year in November in favor of concealed carry legislation that would automatically cover campuses. And he was found gunned down. He was the first official homicide in Columbus in 2017. And the police have made a statement. They said that the investigators do not think the shooting was random in nature.
Okay, there's a lot of wet work going on right now. Unfortunately, a lot of people dying under questionable circumstances. There was that reporter who'd gone public on Russia Today saying that he was forced by corporate management of the media to run propaganda stories for the government under his name and byline. And he supposedly died of a heart attack, but one of the things that was revealed by the Church Committee hearings back in the 1975 is the CIA actually has a gun that can induce a heart attack. And, you know, they're real James Bond over there, only they're not good guys.
Now, with this Tarek Underreiner,
yes,
it hit the media out here. It hit all of our main media outlets. And then there was a 2 or 3 day period where it was pretty silent. And then, like I said, 2 or 3 days later, they came across with a one-line mention of it, and they said authorities do believe it's possible that this was drug-related. Now, if you look into this guy, Mike, he had above 4.0 GPA. He was obviously politically active. It doesn't fit the MO, if you ask me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But in this day and age, you know, we're used to people being killed off by governments and even corporations, and the police just go along and say, oh, yeah, it was a suicide. He shot himself in the back of the head twice. And we're supposed to just nod and go along with that nonsense. And of course, you know, all the way back to the start of my, if you'll pardon the expression, career, the Vince Foster case. They put out a piece of propaganda that was just woefully inadequate and not really convincing, and we call them on it. This is nonsense. You guys are lying to us. And it's like all of a sudden daring to accuse the government of lying is like the new top offense in this country.
Right, and I find it really ironic that the same people who told me all along as a child, you know, you can do anything, you can be anything you want, are the same people who look at me nowadays and say, oh, you can't do anything about it, you can't, and it just doesn't add up to me, and I just feel like we can. People just need to have the information. Oh, absolutely, and we are making a difference. That's what's got the globalists in such a panic. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And getting on back to the news here. The globalists are in a panic. They were so close to their dream of a one-world government and a single golden throne for planet Earth. And it's now just fading away. It's dribbling through their claws, their talons. They don't know what to do about it. Ordinary people, you, me, just like us, in the United States and in Great Britain, have realized that we can, working together, topple the elites, overcome their plans and agendas. Knowing that something is possible is the first step in accomplishing it. Whether you call it the Brexit effect or the Trump effect, it's spreading all over the world. That the people of these various nations are not just helpless, that they can, in fact, working within the system, bring about change. Now, the global elites are having their confab at Davos, and the word is leaking out that there's something unprecedented going on, this rise in populism all over planet Earth. And they're admitting they can't stop it. They don't know what to do. They worked so long and so hard to convince us all that we were part of a single global family and we should have a single global government and spend our lives in permanent debt servitude to a single global bank. And now it's all coming apart. It's all coming apart. Over in the European Union, between the predations of that European Central Bank and the disaster following the refugee migration, ordinary people are saying, this is ridiculous. We can't go any further along this way. And it's rather amusing to hear all of these globalist leaders and the corporate media talk about populism as if it's a dirty word. Oh, you're a populist. They reserve the same venom they used to use for communists. Oh, you must be a commie. You must be a populist. There's nothing wrong with populism. Populism is at the core of democracy itself. That we, the people, can look at a proposal by a politician or a government and say either we agree or we disagree. That's what populism is supposed to be. And the globalists and the elites tried to pull a fast one on us. They tried to establish a single global fascist economic dictatorship and sneak it past us on this idea that as long as we believed we still had elections and still believed we had control, that we would just go along with the fact that we were being forced to be ever more dependent on the banks, on pharmaceutical corporations, on giant food corporations, that bit by bit our options and our choices and our right to be self-sufficient were being taken away. But it's all for a good reason. Got to save Mother Earth. Apparently over in Davos, they're so concerned about video of their goings-on leaking out that in addition to the snipers on the rooftops over there, now they've got anti-drone guns. If anybody flies a drone in to take a video or picture of what's going on inside Davos, it will be shot down. Now, of course, if you shoot down a government drone, you're going to go to jail here.
And by the way, the same thing is going on over at the Dakota Access Pipeline. The police there now have these anti-drone missile launchers because they don't want any more videos and photos coming out of the Dakota Access Pipeline protests because it makes the corporations look bad. It makes the police look bad. And now it's the National Guard. They're going to be bringing them in to deal with those pesky protesters who think that they should be entitled to safe drinking water without buying it from Nestle. So they're going to shoot down any drones that are there trying to document what is being done over there. Story coming out of government slaves. Apparently schools are now offering safe spaces to combat toxic masculinity. Masculinity has now been declared a toxin in our society. If you're masculine, oh, there's something wrong with you. I'm sure the pharmaceutical corporations have a pill. Feeling too masculine? Take this little tablet, and you'll be a sissy by morning. This is not what schools are supposed to be about. Schools are supposed to be about giving our kids the skills needed to compete in a modern, global, technological marketplace. Donald Trump has a major problem in bringing manufacturing back to our country. We don't have a young workforce skilled and trained in what they need to know to work in a modern manufacturing environment. How can you build a car or an airplane with a workforce composed of art history majors? You can't. Now they're out there saying masculinity is toxic, it's evil, it's bad. When did somebody declare open season on us white heterosexual males? Why is it okay to demonize us all of a sudden? We didn't actually do all those things that they're saying we did. I've never personally owned a slave. In fact, my ancestors ran a station on the Underground Railroad. Why are they all targeting me? Because every rising tyrant needs a scapegoat group. For Hitler, it was the Jews. For previous presidential administrations, it was the Muslims. But now the Muslims are our friends because they're helping with globalism. So the scapegoat group is now the straight white male. All the problems are on them. And we're seeing the same kind of dangerous rhetoric about straight white males today that we saw in the German press in the years leading to World War II. Oh, genocide would be good. If we get rid of them, all of our problems will be solved. We've seen all this before. Now, apparently over at the National Health Service in Great Britain, 1/3 of all of their trusts, facilities, have been infected with ransomware. The one at the Imperial College Healthcare in London was hit with 19 attacks in just 12 months. Now, the National Health Service is already run deeply in the red. They don't have the money to take good care of the British people. And they keep getting hit with these ransomware attacks, and nobody does anything about it. Where is the NSA in all of this? We're left with one of two possible conclusions. Either the NSA are a bunch of total incompetents who are too busy amusing themselves with pictures of your naked significant other to actually do any real work, or the ransomware is coming from the U.S. government, like civil forfeiture, just another way of plundering the people by a desperately broke and hopelessly in debt government. There doesn't seem to be any other possibility. Certainly, we've not seen the NSA actually catch any terrorists. They like to claim they did, and when we say, who were they and how did you catch them? Oh, we can't reveal sources. Just take our word for it. We've been marvelously effective. After all, we're the government. Remember the NSA code challenge I did a few years back? 6 messages in 6 codes I created myself, not one was broken. And the NSA was well motivated to break one of those codes to discourage other people from developing their own systems of encryption to protect their data. And the whole point of that one was to remind everybody that all of this NSA spying is only on you, the law-abiding citizen, because real criminals and real terrorists already know all of the computer networks and social media and devices are compromised. They don't use the standard encryption provided by Microsoft. They know better. They know it's backdoored. They write their own. They've got the resources to do it. And I demonstrated how easy it is to do. So the NSA is not after criminals and terrorists. They're after you. And they made themselves be criminals. The Kaspersky people identified a known hacker collective, the Equation Group, as being NSA. Which is probably why they're trying to attack my server yet again. Now here's a little bit of good news. Trump's choice for the head of Department of Energy is vowing to end the global warming scam. And it is. We've got another hard winter coming on, just harsh winter after harsh winter, all the way back to 2000 when the carbon Nazis were proclaiming snowfalls are now a thing of the past. And the corporate media is still out there saying, oh, the sea levels are rising, the polar bears are drowning, you've got to believe us, we're the real news, ignore all that snow and ice in front of your own eyes. You don't know what you're looking at. You're too stupid to recognize snow and ice. It's actually white lumpy rain. Still desperate to maintain that illusion. Now, yesterday we talked about a group of CDC insiders called the Spider Group, who had written an open letter to the head of the CDC saying the CDC is just been totally corrupted top to bottom. That bogus autism vaccine report was just the tip of the iceberg. And so over at John Rappaport's website, he wrote a reply back saying that there are 3 notable CDC frauds that should be looked at, and hopefully will be looked at under the Trump administration. One was the swine flu fraud. From back in 2009, we talked about that when pigs fly flu, oh, it's a pandemic, it's going to wipe off the earth, you've got to buy Tamiflu. And then it turned out that the 2009 flu was less serious than the normal seasonal flu, and the Tamiflu was no more effective against it than ordinary over-the-counter acetaminophen. Then there's another story where the CDC itself is buying massive amounts of vaccines and at the same time heads up research on the safety of those vaccines. It's a monumental conflict of interest that should not be allowed to happen. And then finally, the revelation that the CDC reports on the number of flu deaths in the United States is greatly inflated in order to scare everybody into getting that flu shot. And apparently the British Medical Journal published a report by Peter Doshi basically saying that a lot of the deaths included under flu deaths were not from the flu. A lot of people are being diagnosed as suffering from the flu. They're suffering from something else. But they need to run the numbers up because flu vaccines are big business. I mean, you can't even go to the local pharmacy. There's a sign at the door, get the flu shot while you're shopping. You ain't getting near me with that needle. No way, Jose. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Donald Trump has asked Robert Kennedy Jr., a well-known vaccine critic, to serve as head of a commission into vaccine safety. And Robert Kennedy has now accepted. And we're already seeing the vaccine stocks take a hit. And if you have not already seen it, I highly recommend you get the documentary Vaxxed. I just bought another copy because I keep finding people to give these things away to. But it's Vaxxed, and you need to watch it. There are a lot of other documentaries and websites out there. This is a gigantic scam. And it's all about making money. It's all about selling medicines to perfectly healthy people who don't really need them. And not only are they not effective, some of them are harmful. But as long as our current system allows vaccine makers to put out dangerous products and not suffer any consequence for it, they're going to go on doing it. And that kind of behavior is a hallmark of a fascist economic dictatorship, where the government and corporations are aligned together against the general population. That's where we are. When corporations are allowed to sell dangerous products when the government orders you to buy them, that's fascism. Now, Gene Cernan, who was the last man to walk on the moon, has passed away, age 82. He had a good run. And it almost feels like the end of an era as those first astronauts are all starting to leave us. It's kind of a reminder of how old those of us who were there are getting. And there's a bummer on there. That's going to cool your enthusiasm for the day. Got an interesting article from naturalblaze.com. And it's pointing out, we've been talking about body pH and how optimal human pH is between 7.35 and 7.45, which is why I drink these high pH waters. And it's asking the question, why does the legal safety requirements for water in the Safe Drinking Water Act mandate a pH of 7.0? In other words, slightly acidic, knowing that slight acidity contributes to chronic health problems, heart disease, diabetes. Why not mandate a 7.4 pH for public drinking water? Why make it acidic? Well, certainly going to help the medical industrial complex, isn't it? And we already know that the government isn't all that interested in safe drinking water anyway. Ever since the Flint water scandal broke, more and more people are testing their tap water and discovering it's in deplorable shape. Our country is literally rotting away from the greed of those people up there at the top. And that's not the United States of America the Founding Fathers wanted. We're not the greatest nation on earth anymore. We haven't been for quite some time. We can be again, but it's going to take a lot of work and probably more than a few tarrings and featherings along the way. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I'm watching on Fox News, and they're going on about these 50 Democrats who are going to boycott the Trump inauguration. Do these individuals not realize how badly they look when they behave like this? Like a bunch of spoiled children throwing tantrums because they didn't get what they wanted? Do you think Trump is going to care they don't show up? That he's going to stand up there and say, I refuse to take the oath of office until all the Democrats are here? That's ridiculous. It's just more pathetic grandstanding. And the Democrats and the liberals in general are doing incredible damage to their public image with all of this childish behavior, especially if it goes to violence over the weekend. The perception of the American people, the perception of the world, is going to be a bunch of sore losers are trying to stage a coup d'etat. All of this stuff they're talking about ads to get people to commit acts of violence, that's incitement. These people ought to be thrown in prison. And what's really amazing, remember during the campaign when they were trying to put Donald Trump on the spot, would you gracefully accept the results of the election? And here we are with the results of the election not being what Hillary and the liberals wanted, and they're out there screaming, it's okay for us to riot. It's okay for us to throw butyric acid into the party. It's okay for us to behave like spoiled children because we're liberals and we're above the law. We're allowed to act like this because we serve a higher and more noble purpose. They really are acting like a personality cult. Almost makes me wish I had the Kool-Aid franchise for Pennsylvania Avenue. Apparently George Galloway has taken issue with this BBC's mockumentary on the link between Donald Trump and the Kremlin. And he says basically it comes across like an Austin Powers film in terms of its believability and credibility. But then again, BBC, which has its own problem with its top stars sexually molesting children and being covered up by the BBC. And always remember, BBC was the news network, one of more 3 or 4, but the one we got it on video. BBC reported on the collapse of World Trade Center Building Number 7 more than 20 minutes before it actually happened. Video of the BBC's presenter standing in front of a window overlooking the World Trade Center, reporting on how the Solomon Brothers building, Building Number 7, has just collapsed and it's still standing behind her, proving they were working off of a script. And so now BBC is out there trying to sell this idea that Donald Trump is a tool of the Kremlin. How dare we have a Russian stooge running the United States of America when everybody knows that the United States is supposed to be run by the Israeli stooges. It really is ridiculous. And I, for one, am looking forward to seeing these giant media conglomerates start to tear apart. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Please share what you learn here with everybody. Go gently, go slowly. Do not trigger their defensive reflexes. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.